We move on to our next session, which is going solo, raising happy kids. How important is that? If you thought parenting was tough, here's a lovely session which tells you how to handle it when it gets even tougher, when you're raising the kid all alone. So I request all of you to take your seats, preferably in the front. And I'd like to welcome Nandita Bose and Sujata Parashar. Make sure you take a leaf out of Sujata's new book. And I mean it metaphorically. Don't go around tearing pages out of her book. So all yours, the stage is yours. Welcome.
My name is Sujata Parashar, and I am a novelist and a writer based in Delhi. So I've written 12 books across genres, but this is a non-fiction, going solo, raising happy kids, and the session is on this book. So we have only half an hour, so I was thinking that I'll just start by reading out a portion from the book, and then we'll move on. I am a single parent. This is the author's note that I am reading out from. I have raised my now 18-year-old son all by myself for the most part. His father's nature of work, which involved substantial travel and later setting up his own business in a foreign land, kept him mostly occupied and away from home. Naturally, as a mother, I became the primary caregiver responsible for our son's overall development. Years later, when I separated from my husband and relocated to India, I was somewhat mentally and physically ready to raise Lok Vidhu as a single parent, and yet I was clueless about a lot of things. Lok Vidhu is my son. My parenting journey may also resonate with many two-parent families who find themselves in a similar position. World over, many families have to go through a similar kind of parenting arrangement as I have described above, for one reason or the other. To all such parents out there who may be single-handedly raising their children, whether married or separated, please give yourselves a pat on your back. You are doing an awesome job. Today, when I look back, I feel accomplished. From nurturing my son and giving him an environment necessary and conducive for his overall growth, I also rebuilt my own life after my separation and divorce from my husband. I worked hard to make my personal goals and aspirations a reality apart from my taking care of my son. Of course, it took some adjustments and getting used to the new reality. But once the fresh structure was in place, I became confident and happier. However, reaching the stage involved a great deal of learning. For a long time after I had become a single mother, I doubted my abilities to raise my son on my own. I was full of anxiety and guilt for not doing enough for my child or myself. It was a hopeless situation where all I did was blame myself for every small mistake I made. Moreover, everyone around me bore the brunt of my negative attitude, including my son. It all changed when I attended an international training program in Texas, USA, while working for a Delhi-based NGO. The Parents Empowering Parents program was created to train the psychosocial workers and trainers working with parents and caregivers of children with bleeding disorders, especially from the hemophilia community. Apart from my professional growth, the training program also educated and enhanced my parenting skills. Just giving birth is not enough to deserve the coveted title of being called a parent. You have to earn it. The PEP program changed my attitude towards parenting, and I am thankful to the developers of this powerful parenting program. In this time and era, it is more common to see children being raised by single parents. According to a recent UN report, single-person families in India account for 12.5%, out of which 4.5% are headed by women. With the social and cultural changes in society, with increased rates of divorce and people opting not to marry but become solo parents, we may see this trend more and more. Single parenthood is no longer as much of a taboo as it used to be a decade or two back. However, children growing in such an environment may face certain psychological and developmental challenges if not handled carefully. It is important to understand that children raised by single parents not only need a nurturing, warm, and stable environment, but also a different sensitivity and parenting style to help them develop into independent, capable, and happy adults. The popular idiom, "it requires a village to raise a child," clearly reveals that parenting is a tough task. But as a single parent, one needs to not only keep in mind their child's well being, but also their own to help their children grow into a strong, positive, and capable individuals. Lastly, this book is inspired not only by my own personal experiences, challenges, and triumphs of raising my son as a solo mom, but also by many other such single parents who graciously shared their thoughts and ideas on what made them better in their parenting approach. As mentioned above, my work in this area in the past few years as a psychosocial trainer and um, uh, facilitator greatly helped me shape this book. Lastly, I have tried to be as factually correct as possible to the views, opinions, and parenting stories shared with me by the single parents featured in this book. However, if there has been an oversight as the author, I sincerely apologize in advance and hope you'll forgive me. So that's the author's note.
Thank you so much, Sujata. Hi, good late morning. It's almost noon. My name is Nandita Bose. I live in Bangalore, and I'm a little sad that nobody really understands how important this session is, and the crowds are elsewhere. In the folly of my youth, I went and committed myself to a PhD program. And I thought that, getting your PhD degree in India is the toughest thing you can do to yourself. It's almost like torture to yourself. And then I had two girls. I had two children. And I could do 5 PhDs with the kind of effort that I had to put into bringing up 2 kids. So, hats off to you for doing it alone and for also bringing to us tips and insights on what it takes actually to bring up kids, in the world today. It's not like our parents, like they would count heads, how many have come home for dinner and then cook. It's, those days are absolutely gone. So can we give Sujata a really warm welcome and a rousing round of claps, please?
Thank you. Thank you.
We hear so many horrible things about social media. And the friendship that Sujata and I have is actually all out of Facebook. She is a senior writer to me in terms of her writing career. And when I came in absolutely bumbling and not knowing what to do about the book I had published, she actually mentored me, guided me, and helped me a lot with particularly how to use social media. But there was also a side activity that happened. When we share pictures of our outings and all, we also share pictures of our children. And I fell in love with this little boy that she was bringing up. And I have seen in practice what she has written about in this book throughout Vidu's growing up, So I saw him as a little boy of maybe 8, 10, or, something like that. And then I have seen him at, maybe at 3-month intervals, 4-month intervals, all throughout. So let's get the most difficult part of the, of the question answer session out of the way first. Let me start with this question. What was the most difficult thing about parenting, according to you, and about writing this book on parenting?
Thank you very much for that, those lovely words, and for the warm welcome. Thank you once again. Well, there are 2 parts to it. Based on my own experience, the first thing that I would like to focus on, bringing up a child as a single parent. The most difficult part for me was managing my own emotions. It was in 2007 that I relocated back to India from Singapore. My son Lok Vidu was around 4 years old. At that point in time, I had no idea. I had separated from my husband, but will it end into divorce? That was not, in the picture. And so I was full of all these negative emotions, grief, anger, bitterness, so absorbed with myself that I wasn't really focusing on my son. He was barely 4. So this sudden shift really impacted him, which at that point in time I wasn't focusing on, and I had no idea. It's only in the hindsight that when I look back now that I understand what he must be going through. So I would say the most difficult part for me was handling my own emotions and recognizing that where I'm going wrong. It all changed after, it took me 4 or 5 years to come out of that state. And the turning point was this training program I attended in Texas, USA, which I mentioned in my author's note, that it not only enhanced my professional skills, but also gave me this understanding and insight that where I was going wrong and where I need to make changes. And when I came back, I slowly started adopting them and focusing on him. So parenting was not even a concern or a focus area in the beginning. It was all emotions. I was, completely absorbed and focusing on myself at that, and not even focusing. I was lost, basically. Lost, bitter, and I didn't know what was happening. So that was the first part. And to respond to your second part of the question, I think there were 3 major challenges that I faced. First of all, coming to this understanding or realizing that I need to get this book out. I was always quite apprehensive of talking about my single mom status. I hadn't disclosed it to anyone except for my immediate family. For the longest time, no one knew that I'm a single parent. Not even his teachers or his principal. It was after a couple of years later that I actually went to his principal and I disclosed that I'm a single mom. And she took it well, but that does not happen often. And so deciding to write a book, it was only in 2020 when I realized that my son is now in another couple of years, he'll go away. That is the time I, kind of self-reflected, and I said, no, this is something like coming out of the closet kind of a book for me, and this is a gift for myself and other single parents out there. Let me tell you, there are no single parenting books in India. And this is a hand guide where it is not only based on my own experience and my expertise in this area, but also 50 other single parents by compulsion and by choice. They have contributed to the book, their thoughts, ideas, their stories, etc. But it was extremely difficult to get them on board. Initially, nobody wanted to come and share their stories, basically. So that was the other problem. So the first challenge was me myself deciding that I should be writing this book. The second one was getting them on board. And then the third one was the structure of the book. As I said, that there were no references, nothing I could go back to. So it was completely based on my own expertise, whatever understanding I had as a single parent and as a psychosocial trainer. I designed the entire structure and took in bits. Even then, after this book got published, a lot of single parents came back to me and they said, but you haven't mentioned anything about dating and second chances. What about dating and second chances for single parents? And that I thought was like really important. And that is what the additional chapter, the 6th chapter, is on dating and second chances. And the book, the updated version, will come out end of this year or early next year. Again, single parents have contributed to that as well. How to reach out to children, how to discuss this sensitive issue with them and with the extended family.
Great, this was very comprehensive. A lot of our audience here would also wonder, what does it take to, say you are a novelist already, but you have also now moved into writing non-fiction. What does it take to be a published author? So, a little concise version of your journey from concept to publication.
So, I am an accidental writer, although I can't call myself so now because I've already written 12 books. But when I started off in 2009, my first book was published by Rupa. It was titled In Pursuit of Infidelity. I was writing it for self-consumption and to share it with friends. Probably I would have done that and ended it there. But the story was turning out to be interesting. Luckily, I did not delete it. And I reached out to a few publishers I knew of as a reader. I just sent some sample chapters. Rupa and another publisher wrote back, and they, Rupa gave me a better deal. The book got published. I thought this was the end of it. That's it. I've written one book, but the book became really popular. It became a bestseller within first few months, and I didn't even know what bestseller meant then. I'm talking about 2009, 13 years back. So they kind of educated me on what it meant. That particular book is still selling like hotcakes. It's still doing really well after 13 years. So you can imagine that it was a very popular book, and it compelled me to write another book just to prove to myself that the first book was not a fluke. And the second book also was published by Rupa, and it did well again. It was a YA fiction. And then my journey began. The books just catapulted me into the writing arena, and that's how my writing journey started. But I have been experimenting with my writing style all throughout. So all my books are in different genres. I write across genres. It was just recently, I've written one other non-fiction that was commissioned work for Dabur. That was published by Niyogi, but that's on a completely different area. This, you could say, is my first non-fiction in that sense. And this again, as I said, that I wanted to gift this book to myself and other single parents before my son left home, before he flew the nest. That was the idea, and that's why I wrote this in 2020.
Very briefly, could you list out your learnings on parenting? If anybody asks me, that would be an encyclopedia, and it could not have been finished in 5 minutes, but I would still tell you, do it in 2 minutes. The learnings, the core learnings that you have.
So again, based on my own experience, because I have been a single parent for most of my life, but there will be overlaps. In dual parent households and single parent households, certain things are common. And so again, as I said, based on my experience, I would say that first of all, taking care of your own emotions. Before you start parenting or thinking of parenting your child, you have to parent yourself. Where are you going wrong, or what are the things that you need to, you need to model to your child? That is extremely important. Taking care of your emotions, especially the negative emotions, is very, very important. Addressing them. Going out and seeking help is not bad, it's not wrong. Please go out. Discussing it with your child in age-appropriate manner is very important. Having simple house rules. So I went for this parenting program in Texas. They very beautifully captured everything. Children don't understand too many rules. So you have to simplify them, and you have to put it inside somewhere so that they can see it every day. And they kind of put, made it very concise, and they put it in 3 points. Do not hurt yourself, do not hurt others, do not hurt your environment. 3 simple rules. So if a child is crossing the road and is not mindful of the traffic, it might be possible that you'll get into an accident. So do not hurt yourself comes in that. Do not hurt others. Don't say also things that might hurt the other person. Do not hurt your environment. Now you put so this is a subjective issue. Every household will have different rules, but simplify it, keep it short, and put it at a prominent place. That is something that I really appreciated in that training program, and I've kind of put it in my, I have referred to it, I've mentioned it in my book as well. The other thing that I really believe in is having family meetings. We don't have family meetings at all in India, and that is so, so important to talk about things with children which are away from their studies, other things, their activities that they are involved with. Friends, their thoughts and ideas, the emotional state they are in, that will only come out when you have family meetings. So this is the other takeaway. So very, there are so many of them, but if you ask me, these are the top 3.
Thank you so much for this. See, I'll go back to a statement you made, where you talked about coming out, right? And typically we talk about coming out, in the contemporary context, we talk about coming out with reference to the LGBTQ community.
Right.
We do not really talk about it in terms of divorce. But it is a very right term to use in India particularly, because, typically the man gets away scot-free. Nobody attributes bad things to him. But for a woman to actually admit to being divorced is, it's a huge stigma. And often there's a lot of blame. So did you encounter any of that, and how supportive has your, social network been?
So, yes, you are right. In a traditional society like ours, marriage, the entire responsibility of the success of marriage is on the shoulders of the woman, of the wife. And if the marriage breaks down, the blame is on the woman, on the wife. In my case, luckily, what happened, so first of all, I kept it all hidden. Okay, so my immediate family knew. In fact, my ex-husband's family, for 3 years, they didn't even know that we are separated. They would interact. So my ex-husband lives in Singapore. He's a Singapore citizen. I live in India. I am the one who was, kind of interacting with my in-laws. And for the longest time, they had no idea until he mentioned somewhere on social media about moving on or something. And my sister-in-law saw the post, and then she perhaps may have conveyed to the in-laws, and that's how they came to know. So for 3 years, they didn't even know. In my own family, I had confided. From day one, I told my parents that this is happening. I must also mention this fact that we had an amicable divorce. So he's been very supportive in different ways. But that does not mean that the divorce wouldn't have happened if everything was all right and hunky-dory, right? So it did impact me and my son in a very negative way. My son is an emotional and sensitive child, so when that happened, and I have been always talking with him. His father also has been talking with him since the age of 8 or 10. When he was around 10, I think, when the divorce happened. Although separation happened much earlier, and then it took us 6 years to go for the divorce, which was by mutual consent. But we've been talking with him, and yet the child developed some kind of emotional distress, and every time the exams would come, his hands would start to shiver. I don't know why, but and then we had to homeschool him for a year, then put him back in another school, and from there on, his journey has been marvelous, and he's in University of British Columbia, Vancouver, doing his undergrad from there, and he's an amazing debater and everything. All that happened later. But initially, because if we had not addressed this issue properly, it would have been very difficult. My family was supportive, others did not know. My brother was supportive, but slightly, in Indian context, what happens, even if you stay away from your husband, you're married and everything is healthy and fine, even then there are issues. Neighbors will come and ask you, oh, when are you going back to Singapore? Why isn't your husband visiting you? Then in the rituals also, Hindu houses, you have several rituals, and they would not invite me because they're not sure of my status. So you feel discriminated, and that hurt me a lot. And all these things came back to me in 2020. I had to build that courage to actually sit down and write this book. And I knew that once it is out, everybody will know that I'm a single mother. And so I had to prepare myself mentally for it. I'm talking very openly with you all here now, but this wasn't the case for many years. I hope that answers the question.
That does answer the question, and it does tell us, of the stresses that, of course your husband would have had another, lot of stresses as well.
Yeah.
Because, typically Indian husbands get their creature comforts taken care of by the wife. So the house is clean, and, the shirts are ironed, and, food is on the table. And, to do without it must have been difficult, but it is far more difficult for a woman to sort of manage alone. So I'll tell you a little about my parenting journey. I had dogs before I had kids. And let me tell you, it's just absolutely gorgeous having dogs. And I thought all that I knew about training dogs, I will just transfer to my kids. And I said, look, I give you food, I give you shelter, I pet you, I'm taking care of you, you get water, you get walks, you get everything, now behave. And obviously it doesn't work that way. The other thing that came as a shock to me was this husband of mine, who was this 6-footer, tall, burly man's man, suddenly became this softie who his daughters could ring around his little finger. And there I had to take on the tough cop position of the family, right? Because you can't have all good cops.
True.
So how do you do that? Because there is also the discipline that has to be, inculcated. And then on the other side, you have to give motherly love. And
Yeah.
both have to come from you. In our house, like nobody comes to me with any problem because I will just give the tyrant's response, you know. So all that goes to the dad, and it frees me up a lot, you know. But it's not the case with you. So how do you manage?
So there's a whole chapter on it, and it's titled Compassionate Disciplining. And there's another chapter on it, Single Parent and Child Communication. These two are important chapters, and kind of respond to your question in that way. I think it is important that, as I mentioned, that you have certain rules, and then you stick to. The child must understand that there is a consequence if you break the rule, and that consequence must be applied consistently. What we miss out on is this consistency part. So if you're saying a no to a particular thing today, that no must be always there. Every time the child comes with you with certain request, or certain thing he wants, and you don't want to give it to him, do not change that stance the next time. So that is very important in single parent households especially, because out of guilt we tend to give in to the child. Because we are not able to pay attention to the child and we are busy in so many thousands of things, we tend to give in to whatever he says. So one time we'll say, no, okay, no, you can't do this. The next time you let him do because you are so busy. But that is something that we have to avoid, and it takes practice. It doesn't happen. So sliding is okay. In parenting, sliding back is just fine.
So I think we'll end the session here. Thank you so much for being here. You've been an excellent audience. Buy books. Go home loaded with books, okay? Support the publishing industry. We've been very, very badly hit by COVID, believe me. So please help us out. Thank you.
Thank you very much.